Hi, my name is Kaili Miller, and I will be talking about the emergency management systems in Ireland. The Republic of Ireland is a small island to the west of Great Britain. It is a very temperate climate, which means it's not privy to many of the natural disasters that other coastal areas are prone to. And it also has coastal highlands, which is what gives it its beautiful mountain to sea view that is very famous. Some of Ireland's most frequent disasters are sinkholes, landslides, coastal erosion, severe weather, and flooding. Hurricanes and tsunamis are very rare, although the last hurricane to hit Ireland was in 2017 and was one of the worst natural disasters to hit in over 50 years. So, the structure of emergency management in Ireland is a little complicated. So, the National Steering Group is what helps to develop and implement emergency management framework in Ireland. And they have 5 governmental agencies and 3 principal response agencies. And those 3 principal response agencies are what initiate an emergency response in local areas. So each local area would have each um, principal agency in it, and they are the ones that initiate this emergency response. So if the disaster is too big for the local level, then that's when they go to the regional level, which means that all of the senior officers from our 3 principal response agencies would get together in their specific region and implement their disaster management protocols for that specific region. And then if the disaster is even bigger and on a national level, that's when um, the parent principal agencies, so our 5 governmental agencies, come together and they implement our national framework emergency protocols, and they mitigate and respond to the disaster. So, the National Steering Group comprised the framework for emergency management with the 3 principal agencies in order to give the 3 principal agencies charge and power in times of an emergency crisis. So, this replaces the old framework that has drastically undersupported emergency management in Ireland since 1984. And it allows for the best response and ordinance with international response and procedures, yet is tailored to Irish traditions, customs, and hazards. Um, the 3 principal agencies handle the response at a local level until there is need for regional or national level help. So it follows the 5 main principles of emergency management, which is hazard, risk and reduction, mitigation and risk management, planning and preparedness, coordinated response, and recovery. And the Irish are very good at planning and preparedness and coordinated response and recovery. So, some participants in disaster management are the defense forces, so the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. Then we have the civil defense, which are volunteers coordinated on a county level by their local authorities. The volunteer emergency services provide people, resources, vehicles, useful equipment, facilities. Utilities help to restore their own services after an emergency. We have our private sector organizations, which means the disaster occurred on some type of property that they own. The Irish Red Cross helps with medical assistance, and the Met Irenin is the Irish National Weather Service, and in the case of a severe weather, they issue public service announcements that must be answered and controlled by the local authorities and the principal agencies. And disaster management is the communication between the 3 principal agencies, because the document does not lay out exactly who takes the reins in an emergency. Rather, the framework is more flexible to allow for all different forms of disaster and the repercussions they might have. This more flexible framework might lead to 2 agencies wanting to implement their emergency plans, but there's only need for one plan, and the 2 other agencies assist if need be. Each individual agency must form their own emergency management framework for their specific area. This should include the jobs and requirements of the other principal agencies during the emergency period. If an area's plans are not laid out well, then two agencies could want to take over in terms of a disaster, and only one is needed. And that's where our obstacle comes in, because there's a clash between these management systems when they should be helping to respond and mitigate a disaster. So, some things that have shaped disaster management in Ireland was their previous poor management system. Um, it didn't lay out the three principal agencies' jobs well enough, so people would clash for a response in a local area when there was only need for one principal agency in that local area. And it also showed them that they needed to cooperate and coordinate with other principal agencies at a regional and a national level rather than just at a local level. So it's a team effort, it's not just one person doing it. And then severe weather was when they first implemented their plan, and it turned out to work really well. And people were very happy because they were able to quickly build trenches and drain the water out of Ireland very, very fast and get the Irish people back on their feet. And then Hurricane Ophelia was one of the worst disasters Ireland has faced in over 50 years. The Irish Meteorological Service issued a red warning for all of Ireland on October 14th, and the National Emergency Coordination Center and the Irish Meteorological Service continued to issue warnings so the public could prepare and hunker down for the storm. This included closing schools, telling people to go inside, get supplies. They estimated at the beginning the storm would cause around 1.5 billion euros in damage, and after all the mitigation and disaster preparedness effects, it only caused around 68 million euros in damage, and around 2 people were killed. Um, and we can see through this disaster management systems that they have done a wonderful job at preparing for this disaster and as running as smoothly as possible as they could in times of an emergency. And these are my references. Thank you. I'm sorry this was long, but Ireland is a little complicated.